In this video, we're going to explore how we went from this original track to this banging remix. My name's Dan Jeffries, aka Rate and Follow. Let's go. A couple of months ago, the wonderful guys at Krafted Records asked me if I would remix a track by a new artist called Lucky Cat, and it was a track called The Dash. And I always love a remix, and in this video I want to show you the process that I personally use to convert or explore that original track, take elements from it, put it into a remix project, and then start to add my own flavor and ideas to come up with that Rate and Follow remix sound. I've done quite a few remixes now for various artists over the years. I absolutely love a remix project. It's a way of being creative without having to think of something from scratch. It puts you under pressure because you've normally got a couple of weeks deadline to do it in, and it pretty much always guarantees a release as well. So if you can ever get yourself, if you're a new producer, put yourself forward for remixes, do remix competitions, try them out. It's a great way to be creative without having to think about everything from the very beginning, if that makes sense. So the artist, Lucky Cat, he sent me a folder of stems, and I simply dropped those stems into a Bitwig project. I'm a big Bitwig fan, and you'll see why Bitwig, I think, is the absolute best DAW for remixes in a moment. And then what I would do is I would listen to the track and just play it through and just get used to the track. And one of the things I would do is add mixed in key, if you have it, onto the track, because I can start to figure out what key I'm working in. So this is really handy. And I might actually solo just the lead, so I've got a much cleaner. Okay, so tell me F minor, D flat minor. So that gives me some kind of guide that I can work to. I can also, using Bitwig, if you press number 7, you get the audition tool. And this means that I can audition little elements without having to solo the whole track or play the whole track. Let me just zoom out a little bit. So if I said, okay, I want to hear what this ARP2 is doing, or maybe what this effect here is doing. It's a really quick way to just audition these individual elements. So what I would start to do is start to identify those clips or 4 bars or 8 bars or even 1 bar sections that I really like. So as you can see, I've grabbed a drum loop here, I've grabbed an effects loop here, I've grabbed a hi-hat loop here, a snare loop here. The sub basses are just amazing, and I knew I was going to work with these a lot. You've got 2 sub bass notes, and we'll explore those a little bit more a bit later. So I basically select all of these elements, and what I would then do is create a new project, activate the audio engine. I personally don't use scenes or clips. I tend to work straight in the arranger. If you come from Ableton, you may prefer working in this way. I tend not to, so I can hide those. But what I can start to do now is drag and drop these clips into this new tab. Oops, wrong one. So I can place it there. Let's move this tab across to here. It's like working in multiple documents. I might take the snare loop and put it there as well. let's also take one of the basses. So I'm starting to build up an arrangement, or at least a palette of the sounds that I want to use. We'll take the other bass line. I'm not going to do all of these, but it gives you a sense. And I'll do one more, which was I think the ARP. Okay. So when I play this back, and if I set the tempo, which was 128, I made the decision to stick with the original tempo as well. So I've got some of those elements, and basically I built up a selection of these tracks. So this for me is the exploratory phase. It's what's here, what can I use, what do I like the sound of, what do I think is going to be a really good hook. I mean, this keys track was very obvious to me that I was going to use this. Oops, I haven't activated the audio engine, so let's just copy that in. That one, and I think the one at the very beginning, these were definite motifs that I was going to work with. I particularly like this opening one. And I'm thinking that with a really nice grooving bass line and kick is gonna, you know, build up an interesting track. So that's the exploratory phase. And then the next phase was really to start to develop this small arrangement into a much bigger arrangement. And so we're going to now dive into the development phase. So this is the full project. This is not mixed and it's not ready for release at this stage, but this is me exploring these ideas further and building it up into a 6-7 minute track. So we can see we come in at about 6.5 minutes. I knew this remix was going to be a bit more of a dance floor friendly remix, no disrespect to the original, but I guess a tougher dance floor vibe. So I wanted some nice chunky drums in, and I use Loopcloud quite a lot to find my samples. I've got a lot of sample packs already, but I do find Loopcloud really, really useful because it integrates directly into Bitwig, and I can drag and drop either MIDI or audio tracks straight into the browser in time. So Loopcloud for me works really, really well. So I found this top loop, which I like, with just a nice groove to it. Did tame it down a bit by using the filter from Arturia. And then some other sounds as well. So a nice big splash at the start, just to pronounce everything. And the first sound that I took really from the original was this, what I called a stutter vox. It was a Micro Freak synth. And if we play this back, I added something called beam, which gave it, again, lots of really nice movement. Oh, it's not going to show the graphic. Oh, there we go. It's quite heavy on the graphics. Really nice movement, but I decided to automate it during the build-ups, pre-drop, so we get a clearer sound. Then it's going to drop back to the texture again. So that's a really nice technique, and it's just using the dry and wet mix. So that worked really well. So I had this along with the top percussion, also the hi-hat, which I think I possibly took from the original, or I found a hi-hat. Yeah, just like I found a hi-hat. And a closed hi-hat loop, which I also found on Loopcloud as well. So we've got a nice groove going. I've got a low kick, which is the kick from the original. So just a nice light thud, but then I go into a kick from kick 2. So a big chunky tech house kick drum. And I also started to work with an arpeggiator. So this was really interesting. I took one of the original samples and I chopped it up into the drum machine. So we had some different hits. And then I used this fantastic tool called Second, which is a sequencer. And I just randomized the patterns and it came up with this really cool pattern, which I then basically dropped the MIDI file into here. So I had it as a permanent MIDI track in the arranger. And it's just really nice and choppy, not doing too much. A little bit delay on there with the comeback kid. Beam, volt, just adding a bit of grit. And then we've got the rev intensity reverb plugin, just giving it a bit of space. So without all of those plugins, quite dry. And this really adds just a nice background texture. So we're getting a flavor of the intro and the build up, and at bar 17 I wanted to work with that main melody. So remember this melody, sorry. Now that for me was a bit too melancholic, so I used Bitwig's amazing tool of slicing this up into a multi-sample or a drum machine, either, doesn't matter. You choose how many slices you want, how often, whether it slices at the transient or it slices at certain time intervals. And it created this sampler. And the multi-sampler then had multiple notes. Oops, let's solo that. Which I can then, can't hear very well because there's lots of reverb and delay going on. But I could then start to put these MIDI notes in and from the keyboard play a new pattern. Nice, so. Paying homage to the original sound, but giving it a new vibe. A bit of build up. Okay, so obviously we've got a drop here. I'm going to just unsolo everything at this point because we want to hear what's going on. So what's going to drop at the 32 bar section, where what's the best feature of this track? For me, it's the bass line. So I wanted both of these bass lines coming in. And also, I wanted to explore a possible vocal. And I had a look on Loopcloud and I found a vocal of, it was quite a mixed vocal, but they used the word dash. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to just cut that out and just work with that word. And you can see here we've got dash vocal. And so this is how it builds and this is how it drops. Nice. A little bit of percussion before the drop. And also where was it? Some odd little glitches that I found. Again, just from a glitchy sample pack and just... Again, just to give it a bit of a wonky texture. So we're into the main body of the track. That bass line absolutely rolling. I'm not doing any real processing at this point because for me, this is the creative phase. This is the coming up with ideas phase. It's not about mixing or processing. I know a lot of people like to mix whilst they're writing, and that's fine. I tend to do it after the creative phase. So those stutter effects disappear. We get a really nice ride that comes in. Some original samples from the lead of the melody. And you can also hear this bass noise. Again, this was just a really nice sample that I found on Loopcloud. And sound selection is just so important. If you can have an ear for that and develop an ear for that, that's half the battle done, in my opinion. So the track grooves along nicely, and then we start to add some extra elements in. So a bit later on, I found this quite chunky percussion track. Also, as a point of interest, as a little build-up, I took one of the dash sample. Oops, sorry, let me just sort my mouse out. And I just stretched this really far. And it just sounds really nice, I think. I think at that point we also automated some delay, tape delay as well. Again, just to give it some texture. So we're really rolling, lots of elements here, lots of hats, lots of movement. And also there was a guitar sample in the original, so I decided we had to introduce the guitar. And this is working with Tantra. So if we bypass that. So again, just lots of nice movement, variation. And I did a bit of cutting up at the end, again, just to signify that this is the end of this phrase, and we're going to go into some new territory. Also used an original part of the keys, so no editing on this at all, not even any effects, just as is, because again, really want to pay homage to the original track, don't want it to not sound recognizable. And now we're going to build to the drop. Now how you do this is entirely up to you, there is no right or wrong. I wanted a subtle reference to that bass line. And then we're going to build it up with some snare rolls. And also using transit, which I'll show you in a second. So Transit is doing a lot of work here. Transit is a fantastic plugin. In fact, I've got two of them on the go. And I think I've got a mix of ShaperBox and Transit in this build-up. So without them, it sounds like this. Just basically single notes, as you can see. But ShaperBox, I believe, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in some pitch adjustments. So Rhythm Riser 1. Lush. And then one of the transits, I can't remember which, is really messing around with the pitch. That one. So really creating that big build up before it drops away is lots of fun. And that for me is the bit I tend to spend quite a lot of time on to get that right. It's not easy. And you want it to have as much impact as possible. And then we're back into the last part of the track. And often, because we've had quite a lot of melody in that breakdown, I like to drop it back into something quite sparse and rolling. So we just drop back into the drums and the bass. We still have our little glitchy noises. Reintroduce the stutter vocal. So it's really taking shape now. Okay, so once I'm happy with it on a compositional level, it's time to think about the mix down. So what I would do is I would go into bounce and I would select all of these tracks and including the any send effects that I'm using, and I'd bounce them at 24-bit 48K. I always add 5-bar gap at the start because I want some silence. I didn't in this instance, but I would normally add some at least 2 or 3 bars silence at the beginning and bounce that too. So there's just no artifacting. There are no artifacts or clicks or glitches or anything right at the start. Just give yourself that bit of space. And then once I've exported these tracks, I leave it alone and I don't touch it for 2-3 days. And I've normally got it running around in my head, playing over. I'm used to how it sounds. But now I can start to be a bit more clinical with it when I return to it for the final mix process. And we're going to have a look at that bit now. So this is the mix project. And as you can see, I've put all the tracks into different groups. Low, leads, mid drums, top drums, effects, vocals, and then there's a tape delay that carried over from the mix down, or sorry, from the previous project. If we look at the lows, we've got kick, low kick, sub, and the 2 subs. And I might start doing some EQ at this stage, just cutting out some frequencies, maybe some of the top elements that I don't want. I also make sure I'm working in either VSX or SonarWorks. VSX is great actually for really, is it going to work? There we go. For hearing it in kind of different scenarios and having that pair of headphones where you can hear it in a car environment or a studio environment, whether it's near field or far field. I think it's worth it just to sort of reference your tracks against other spaces. I do also then use metric AB. This is just really essential. Drop your tracks in just to give you a sense of level and EQ, punch. You know, it's really difficult getting your mixes to sound as good as professional tracks. And I think you just got to do the best you can. I actually, with my own projects, send my tracks off to a mix mastering engineer who will do all of the group processing work because I don't trust myself in a pair of headphones enough compared to a guy in a 20 grand studio with professionally treated room and big fat speakers and lots of hardware and outboard gear. So I'd rather spend that bit of money and get those tracks absolutely amazing. But in the instance of this, when you're working for labels, you need to give them the final mix down so they can then master it themselves. I do always put a limiter on the final track not too much. It's a bit overkill at the moment. But just so I can hear what it's like with that bit of limiting in there. And to see if anything's really poking its nose out. On the lows, I've got some inflator. Some fuel. Fuel is a really cool plugin for adding a bit of grit and multi-band compression as well, or OTT, and some thickening of the low end as well. Also by the same company, Sweet EQ, which again is just brought out some of that richness, and then the Tool plugin just to bring the overall volume up of that track. On the leads, really just the inflator, and I probably have done some EQing and treatment of individual tracks. One thing I did do quite a bit with was the main lead. I was getting some clicks, which was a bit annoying. And I was getting quite a lot of noise, and I think that was a hangover from a tape delay plugin. So I used the Acon restoration plugins, which are really good. They're not very expensive, and they got rid of some of these annoying clicks that I was getting. There, you can hear it just there. Just some little digital clicking. And it also reduced some of that hiss that had come through from the tape delay. And really, I should have just gone back and reduced that noise on the tape delay plugin. I also added some additional effects. So Tantra 2 was in there as well, which gets automated on the mix a bit later on. And ShaperBox. So we used ShaperBox on the drop a bit later on, just to add some pitch effects, and it kind of, the sound falls down, and I thought it worked really, really well. Although whenever I do it, it doesn't seem to want to work. Which is really annoying. When I've on the final version, it works, and it seems ever since I've tried to do this on this project, it just doesn't want to play it back. Maybe. Yeah, don't know why it doesn't do this, but you have to listen to the final version and you'll hear the pitch come down, and it just added something, a really nice dimension to it. On the drums, we've got the Oxford Inflator, a bit of Pro Q. Just to tame that snare snap a little bit. And again, the inflator just bringing things out. If you can get a copy of the inflator, I just absolutely love it. It's gold. On the top drums, again, similar work with the inflator. One of the things I did do with the top drums was I added a shaker pattern at a late stage. So you can see this was not part of the bounce from the previous project. This was something I added in. And it really added a dimension that it needed. And if we just explore this a minute, it's quite a standard shaker loop without the effects. Not so nice. So we used this plugin called Texture, and this, I dropped a sample in of another shaker, and that blended the two together. So gave it a bit of a lower depth. The ShaperBox added some width and also some volume pumping as well. And the gate just tamed things a little bit, and then finally used the tool to just bring that volume down. And I think I even added a bit of EQ just to cut out any of the low end and the top as well. So don't be afraid when you at that mix down phase and you're working in these tracks to go, do you know what, it is missing something. And that's the joy for me of exporting the audio and bouncing the audio, is that it guarantees it's not the guarantees, but it means I can be, like I said, more clinical about the mixing process. And if I went, do you know what, this isn't working, or this track doesn't add anything, delete it. And you don't think, oh, I've spent hours on this. It's just got to go for the good of the tune. So then we had some effects, again, using Inflator and Pro Q, and the same on the vocals. I think I did add the Armec EQ. I love the Armec EQ. Let's unsolo everything. Let's get the whole track back in. Sorry, bear with me. And you can see that the mix just feels richer and a bit more controlled. Yeah, the Armec vocal is really nice. Gives it really, just really nice warmth and presence. And that's it really, and it's kind of then just listening and grooving and cutting bits out, or maybe moving bits, repeating bits, shaping it as you think is best. I did also route the mid drums and the top drums to a bit more, and actually the low as well, to a bit more compression as a send. So I called it the SSL drums. I don't know why. I think I had an SSL mixer with me at the time. So that's using the iHeart New York for some parallel compression, and again some Armec EQ, and then just a little bit of, and maybe this is wrong, but for me it sounded good, a bit of townhouse compression as well. To again just tame things in. If you hear it with and without, just some really nice brightness, and again thickening it up a bit. Is it right? Is it wrong? Does it matter? Does it sound good? That's the most important thing. So there you go. There's, I said I'd do about half an hour, and I hope you found that useful. I hope you can see why I think Bitwig is such a fantastic tool for remixing, especially the idea of working in these sub-projects where, you know, you can go and lift an entire track and drop it in to your project without having to close something, open it up, worry about it crashing, the resources that it takes, etc. You know, if I just go, do you know what, I love this bit and I want to add this to a new track, it's done and it's in. And I don't think there's any other DAW that can do that. So if you're a remixer, or if you really want to get into remixing, I think that's a game-changing element of Bitwig. But yeah, the track is out now on Krafted Records, on all the stores. If you could support, that would be amazing. I'm going to do some more of these breakdowns for some upcoming releases that I've got. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you soon.